The ballroom of Hartwell House was the kind of room built to swallow people whole. 3 stories of vaulted ceiling, chandeliers that dripped wax onto the marble like slow rain, a staircase wide enough for 6 women in court dress to descend abreast. Tonight only one descended, and the orchestra forgot how to play. Marius Crenshaw stood at the edge of the dance floor with a glass of claret going warm in his hand, and for the second time in his life, he could not breathe in her presence. The first time had been the morning he told her she was ordinary. He watched her come down the staircase. He watched the way the room watched her. He watched her. Only her. The woman who had once been his wife. She wore black. Not the black of mourning. This was a black that moved. Silk so dark it drank the candlelight and gave nothing back. A single rope of pearls fell past her waist and swung when she walked, as if she had decided that diamonds were what other women wore. Her hair was darker than he remembered and pinned with a coronet, and the coronet was the part he could not stop looking at, because she had not been entitled to wear one when he had known her. A footman announced her in a voice trained to carry. Her Grace, the Duchess of Ashbourne. Marius felt the words go through him, the way a sword goes through a man who has not yet realized he is dead. Duchess of Ashbourne. The room performed its small ritual of bows and curtsies. A duchess outranked nearly every soul present. She inclined her head with a precision that suggested she had been practicing, and the practicing had been brief, because she had always been quick at things she set her mind to. She did not look at him. Lady Hartwell was Marius's cousin, and his presence had been printed on the guest list 2 weeks ago. A year ago she had been Cassia Crenshaw. A year and 4 days ago he had told her she was ordinary, and signed the papers that ended their marriage, and watched her walk out of his townhouse with one trunk and the same green pelisse she had worn the day he met her. He had told himself it was kindness. He had told himself she would find some quiet country gentleman who did not require brilliance from his wife. He had told himself a great many useful things. He had not told himself that he would see her, 1 year later, descend a staircase wearing the rank of a woman a man like him bowed to. Crenshaw. He turned. His friend Edmund Rye was at his elbow. "You have gone the color of paper," Edmund said. "Sit down or stop staring." "I am not staring." "You are staring with your entire body, Marius. Even your boots are staring." "How?" Marius said, and stopped. "Ashbourne," Edmund said gently. "The old Duke. They married in October. Quiet ceremony, country chapel. He was 68, and not in the best of health, and he died in February. Tonight is the first ball she has accepted. He was 68. Yes. That is generally what happens when a 68-year-old gentleman of indifferent health takes a wife he adores. He lives a few blissful months and expires gratefully in her arms, leaving her every unentailed acre and the use of his title for as long as she draws breath. The settlements were extraordinary. You knew it too, if you read your correspondence properly. I have been in Surrey since March. You sulk magnificently. It is one of your gifts. Across the floor, the Duchess of Ashbourne accepted the arm of a tall, fair gentleman Marius did not know. The Cassia he had married had walked the way a girl walks, who is conscious of being observed. This woman walked as though the floor had been laid for her, and she was deciding whether to forgive the carpenters. "Who is that?" Marius said. "That, Marius, is Lord Tobias Vance. 29, unmarried, owns half of Hampshire, and has been openly courting her for 3 weeks. The dowagers are calling it inevitable. She is in mourning. Half mourning. He sent her white roses on Tuesday, and the next morning she rode out with him to Richmond. She has not said yes. She has not said no. She is letting the season look at her, which is the most powerful thing an unattached titled widow can do." Marius set the claret on a passing tray, He did not trust himself to hold a glass. I should leave. You should not, Edmund said. If you leave now, every soul in this room will mark it. And by tomorrow morning, the only story being told over breakfast in London is that the man who divorced Cassia Crenshaw for being ordinary fled the room when she walked into it as a duchess. Stay. Bow when she passes. Drink water, not wine. Endure. It was the worst advice he had ever been given, and the only correct advice in the room. He stayed. He stood with Edmund. He greeted his cousin. He drank water. He thought about every word he had ever spoken to Cassia in the 4 years of their marriage, and he wondered which of them she had remembered hardest, and he was very nearly certain he knew the answer. Then a woman touched his sleeve. Mr. Crenshaw, a small, sharp old woman in violet, was looking up at him with the kind of expression cats wear when they have come across something interesting and broken. Lady Brearley, he said, bowing. Tell me, are you acquainted with the new Duchess of Ashbourne? I have had that honor. Recently. Some time ago. She knew. Of course she knew. Lady Brearley had been at his wedding. Lady Brearley had once told Cassia at one of his dinners that her gown was a charming color for a woman of her complexion, in a tone that had made Cassia leave the table early. I believe the Duchess is coming this way. He did not turn. The room had told him already. My lady, said a voice behind him. And the voice was Cassia's. And it wasn't Cassia's, because the Cassia he had married would have softened the syllables. This voice was not making anything ordinary. Your Grace. Lady Brearley sank into a curtsy deep enough to please a princess. You are very kind to receive me. I am told you and my late husband were old friends. The dearest. The very dearest. And, Your Grace, may I present, that is, I believe you may already be acquainted with Mr. Marius Crenshaw. Then she did look at him. Her eyes had not changed. They had gone deeper, perhaps, the way a river is quieter when it has cut a deeper channel. They held him exactly the way a stranger's eyes held him. Not warmly, not coldly, only directly, with the steady, incurious attention of a woman who had decided very long ago what he was, and saw no reason to revise the verdict. Mr. Crenshaw, she said. Your Grace. He bowed. He had certainly never bowed this low. I trust you are well. Tolerably, Your Grace. And your mother? In good health, Your Grace. Please convey my own to her. I shall, Your Grace. It was the smallest possible exchange. Each sentence landed in him like a clean stone dropped into a deep well. She inclined her head. The Duchess of Ashbourne moved past him, and the rope of pearls swung once at her hip, and he caught the faintest scent of something woodier than the perfume she had worn as his wife, a scent that belonged to a woman who had her own house and her own life. He stood very still. She is even more remarkable than I had been led to believe, Lady Brearley said mildly. You look quite struck. Forgive me, I should fetch my cousin. He went. Not toward his cousin, toward the doors that led to the long gallery, where the air was cooler. He let himself through and stood for a moment with his hand against the cold panel of it, breathing carefully, the way a man breathes who has been struck in the diaphragm. Tolerably, Your Grace. He had said it like a stranger at a regimental dinner, because there was no other word a man could say to a woman who had once loved him and now looked at him as one looks at a footman whose face is not unfamiliar. He had divorced her in March of last year. The reasons he had given the lawyer had been clean and respectable. Incompatibility, mutual desire to dissolve, generous settlement, which she had refused because she had said, very quietly, that she did not wish to take his money. He had insisted. She had taken what her own father had given her and walked out. The reason he had given her, in the morning room on the day, had not been clean. He had said, "You are an ordinary woman, Cassia. I had thought when I married you that there was something more in you, but there is not. You are kind. You are well-behaved. You are pleasant in a parlor. You are nothing else. And I cannot live the rest of my life with nothing else." He had said it because he had been in a state of cold panic at the prospect of his own life and had wanted someone to blame for it. He had said it because the woman his mother had begun to praise that month, a Lady Henrietta Marchwood, had been everything Cassia was not, witty and titled and acid-tongued. He had said it because he had been very stupid. He had said it, and she had not cried. She had said, very level, "All right, Marius, if that is what I am to you, then we should not be married. Send the papers. I shall sign them." She had signed them within the week. She had been gone within the fortnight. And 6 months later, by means he had not troubled to learn, she had become the wife of the Duke of Ashbourne, a man whose name Marius had not even known her to know. A door at the far end of the gallery opened. Lord Tobias Vance had a hand at the Duchess's elbow, in the loose way of a man who has the right and chooses not to overuse it. They were laughing about something. She was laughing. She had not laughed when she spoke to Marius. She saw Marius. He saw her see him. Lord Tobias inclined his head pleasantly. He murmured something to the Duchess. They turned and walked the other direction along the gallery, their backs to him, the long rope of pearls swinging at her hip with every step. A door at the far end opened and closed. Marius was alone with the portraits. He pressed the heel of his hand against the paneled wall and closed his eyes, and said, very quietly, into the empty gallery, "What have I done?" The gallery did not answer. It did not need to. He did not sleep. He returned to his rooms in St. James's at 2:30 and watched the fire die in the grate. By 8, he was at his desk, reading correspondence the way a man reads testimony at his own trial. The Ashbourne announcement was there, folded into a society sheet from October. The bride was a Miss Cassia Holt, daughter of the late Reverend Edward Holt of Barrowmere. Marius read the paragraph 3 times. Holt. She had taken her father's name back. He had not even known her father was dead. There was a letter from his mother dated last week. He read it and put it down. His mother had told him, all that long winter before the divorce, that Cassia was a sweet girl but a small one, that a man of his name was meant for larger air, that the Marchwood girl was a finer match. He folded the letter and placed it under a paperweight. At 11, he rang for a horse. He took it south through the park and rode without seeing anything until he was on Park Lane, and then he turned the horse north again, because he had, without meaning to, begun riding in the direction of Ashbourne House on Grosvenor Square. He rode past it. The gates were open. A traveling carriage stood in the forecourt, with a coronet on the door panel. Footmen were carrying out trunks. A maid was settling a small gray dog into a basket on the box. The Duchess of Ashbourne came down the front steps in a green pelisse. He pulled his horse up so sharply that the gelding shied. It was not the same green pelisse. The pelisse he remembered had been 6 years old and a little frayed at the cuffs. This one was new, the color of moss in winter, rather than the bright spring green she had worn as his wife. But the choice of color, in a woman who could now dress in any shade of black silk in London, was a deliberate, particular green. She was leaving town. The trunks were too many for an afternoon call. She was going to Ashbourne Court. She was going to retire from the season she had only just consented to enter. She was going because of him. She did not see him. She climbed into the carriage. The coachman cracked the reins. The carriage rolled out and turned north up Park Street, and Marius understood 3 things at once. She was running from the season she had earned. He was the reason, and he could not let it stand. He turned the horse and rode hard for home. In his study, He wrote 2 letters in 20 minutes. The first was to his steward at Ravelstone, instructing him to ready the small hunting box at Hollybrook for a stay of indefinite length. Hollybrook lay 9 miles south of Ashbourne Court. The second was to Edmund, telling him only that he was leaving town for the summer to inspect a long-disputed boundary, and that no other reason was to be given to anyone. By midnight, his trunks were strapped. By 6 the next morning, his carriage was rolling north on the Great North Road, alone, a book on his lap that he was not reading, and a question turning over in his mind that he had not yet allowed himself to phrase. What did he want? He did not know. He knew only that he could not sit in London while she retreated to a country house because of him. He arrived at Hollybrook on the 3rd evening. The hunting box was as he remembered it, low and stone-built, set in a fold of hill above a small trout stream. The housekeeper, Mrs. Hatch, met him at the door. She fed him, lit a fire, put him to bed, and asked gently whether he had any plans for the morning. "I shall ride." "Very good, sir. There is a good track north toward Ashbourne village." She said it the way a country housekeeper says something she has already half guessed. In the morning he rode north. Ashbourne village sat in a hollow between 2 long hills. Market day had brought stalls of cheese and ribbons and the early summer fruits to the green. Marius gave his horse to an ostler at the Three Stags and took a seat in the bow window of the inn parlor and ordered a pot of coffee. He drank the coffee. He waited. He did not know what he was waiting for. He had been there the better part of an hour when the Duchess of Ashbourne walked past the window. She was not alone. A maid was with her, and a footman walked at a respectful distance behind. She wore a sprigged muslin in pale gray and a wide-brimmed straw bonnet, and she was carrying a small basket on one arm and selecting strawberries from a stall with the care of a woman who had grown up in a parsonage and remembered how to pick fruit. Marius rose without thinking. He stepped out into the warm street and stopped because the maid had just looked up and seen him. The maid said, very quietly, "Your Grace." Catesia turned. Her face went still in the particular way it went still when she was deciding what kind of self to be. "Mr. Crenshaw," she said. "Your Grace. You are some way from London. I have business at my property at Hollybrook. The southern boundary has been disputed with Carrowhill for 3 years." "I see. And you, Your Grace, are at Ashbourne Court." "I am. It is my home." "Of course, Your Grace. Forgive me." "Are the strawberries any good?" Marius said, because it was the only thing in front of him. "They are excellent. Mr. Larkin grows them on the south slope above the village. I shall remember that." She looked at him. There was nothing in her face the way a wall has nothing in it. "Mr. Crenshaw," she said, with a politeness so exact that it cut, "please do not feel you need to make conversation with me on Mr. Larkin's strawberries. I am sure your business at Hollybrook will be very absorbing. Good day." She walked the few steps to the next stall and asked the cheesewoman a question, and her voice when she did it was warm, and Marius understood that he had made the worst mistake of his life, and that this woman intended to spend the rest of hers behaving as though he were a faintly remembered acquaintance from a previous parish. He bought a punnet of strawberries he did not want. He returned to Hollybrook. He wrote 4 versions of a letter. He burned all 4. There was a knock at the door of the parlor. "A note for you, sir," Mrs. Hatch said, "brought down from Ashbourne Court by a groom." He took the folded paper. The seal was a coronet pressed into dark green wax. He broke it. "Mr. Crenshaw, I write because I must, and not because I wish to. I am told by my steward that the southern boundary of Hollybrook does not adjoin Carrowhill at any point, and never has. The Carrowhill dispute, which I remember you spoke of once at supper in the 2nd year of our marriage, concerns the eastern boundary of your estate at Ravelstone, which lies in Berkshire and not in this county at all. I write because if you intend to remain in this country and continue to give that as your reason, the village will be laughing at you within the week, and I would not wish to be the cause of your humiliation. Please choose a better lie, or the truth. Cassia, Duchess of Ashbourne. He read it 3 times. He laughed once, short and rough, and then he put his face into his hands, because she had remembered the supper. She had carried that memory into her widowhood, and she had used it now, with surgical precision, to inform him that he was a poor liar, and that she had been paying attention all along. He picked up his pen. He wrote, "Your Grace, the truth, then." He did not finish the letter that night, but by morning he had begun. He did not send it for 2 days. The first version was a confession so complete that to send it would be to throw himself at her feet. He burned it. The second was so smooth it was the sort of letter Lady Brearley wrote. He burned that too. The third said only that he had come north because she had left London on the morning after the Hartwell ball, and he had known he was the cause, and he could not let it stand. That he had not come to ask anything, that if she wished him to leave the county he would leave it the next day. He sealed it. He sent it in the morning. The reply came at 4 in the afternoon. "Mr. Crenshaw, stay if you wish. I will not chase a man out of his own hunting box. But understand that if our paths cross in the village or on a public road, I shall greet you as I would any acquaintance of slight standing, and I shall expect from you the same restraint. The assembly at Ashbourne Village Hall on Saturday next is open to all gentlefolk of the neighborhood. I shall be present. If you mean to stay in this country, you will be invited. C. Ashbourne. He read it 3 times. The words "I shall be present" did the same thing to him each time. She was telling him she would not flee her own neighborhood to spare him discomfort. She was telling him she would be at the assembly, because he would have heard about it within the week, and because she did not wish him to discover it by accident. She was being kind to him. That was perhaps the worst thing in the letter. He went to the assembly. The assembly was held in the long upper room of the 3 Stags, hung with fresh green branches and lit with a great many candles in tin sconces. The room held perhaps 80 people, most of them tenants of Ashbourne and the small gentry, including Sir Augustus Plummer with his 3 unmarried daughters, and a few officers from the militia regiment quartered at Marlcombe. Marius arrived early. He had spent an hour over his cravat. He had decided 3 times to go and 3 times to stay home. He was greeted at the door by Mr. Denning, the local magistrate. "Mr. Crenshaw of Hollybrook, is it? We are most glad. Her Grace has not yet arrived." He took a glass of weak punch. He found a place along the wall. She came in at 8:30. She wore lavender, the silk so pale it looked silver in the candlelight. Around her throat, she wore the same long string of pearls she had worn at Hartwell House. She entered alone. She crossed the floor on her own feet, without any gentleman's arm. She greeted Sir Augustus Plummer. She greeted the colonel of militia. She greeted the vicar. And only after all of this did she allow her eyes to find Marius across the room. He bowed. She inclined her head the precise distance she had inclined it in the Hartwell ballroom, and looked away. And the arrangement had been brutal in its honoring, because it had told the room that she knew him, and the room would observe that she had not stopped to speak. A country dance was forming. Mr. Denning led her into it. He watched her dance with Mr. Denning. He watched her dance with the colonel of militia. He watched her decline, very gracefully, the request of a young ensign. She came toward the bench on which he was sitting. She was coming to sit by the youngest Miss Plummer, 15, and too young for the regimental officers, and too old to be elsewhere. "Miss Cordelia, are you not dancing?" "I am only 15, Your Grace. Then you are at the perfect age to watch. Tell me, who is the gentleman in the green coat? He is a Mr. Halloway, Your Grace. He is a curate. He is in love with my sister Persephone, but she does not know it yet. Does she not? Mama says she is not to know it until he has a living. Your mama is wise. Look, he is asking her for the next dance. Watch his face when she accepts. There. Did you see it? He went pink, Your Grace. He did. That is how a man looks when he is in love and badly out of his depth. Remember the face, Miss Cordelia. You will see it again, on better men, in better rooms, and you will know what it means. The girl laughed. Marius could hear every word. The Duchess of Ashbourne had seated herself there because the kindness of it cost her nothing. She had once spent an entire dinner at his mother's house, drawing out the silent governess at the foot of the table, and his mother had said afterward that it was unbecoming to lavish so much attention on a paid woman. And Cassia had said, very mildly, that she had liked the paid woman better than most of the other guests. He had not, at the time, defended her. He had not even noticed that she should have been defended. He sat on the bench 5 feet from his former wife and closed his eyes for a moment, because there was nowhere in the assembly room to look that did not cause him pain. When he opened them, a tall, fair gentleman had come into the room, very late, in traveling dress. It was Lord Tobias Vance. The Duchess saw him. Her face did not change in the way a face changes for joy. It changed in the way a face changes when a known and pleasant arrival is registered. She rose and crossed the floor to meet him, and he took her hand and bowed over it and said audibly, "Forgive me, Your Grace. The Bath Road is a disgrace. I had said I would come, and I will not be a man who breaks his word for the sake of a wheel. You have ridden the last stage. 7 miles, Your Grace, on a hired horse. Mr. Denning will forgive your boots if you stand him a glass of his own punch." He laughed. She laughed. The room laughed with them. Marius watched Vance lead the Duchess onto the floor, watched the way Vance looked at her, which was the way a man looked at a woman he had decided to marry, and which Marius recognized because he had once looked at her that way himself, in a smaller assembly room, in better years. He set the punch glass down. He did not leave. Toward the end of the evening, he stepped out into the inn-yard for air. A door opened behind him. Out of it came Lord Tobias Vance, alone, fastening a glove. When the lantern light fell across Marius's face, his expression went through 3 swift, well-bred adjustments and arrived at a polite blank. "Mr. Crenshaw, is it not?" "It is." "Vance, Lord Tobias Vance. We have not been introduced, but I am told you and I have an acquaintance in common." He said it the way a duelist says good morning. "The acquaintance," Marius said, "is no longer mine. She is a duchess and a stranger to me by her own right and decision." "That is correctly put, sir. May I ask you a question? Are you here in this county on her account?" "I am. Does she know that?" "She knows. I told her in writing on Thursday. I was told you, and she had been parted for over a year, and that the parting was at your insistence, and that the unkindness of it was famous in town. It was. Then you have come a long way, Mr. Crenshaw, on a thin road. I am aware. I shall tell you something. Her Grace has not asked me to make her an offer. I had thought until tonight that the question was a settled one, and it was only a matter of patience. I see now that her hesitation may have to do with a man in a country coat standing in an inn-yard. I do not intend to give her up easily, but neither do I intend to win her by stealth or against her will. I will be here as long as she allows it, on the assumption that any answer she eventually gives me will be the answer she chose. Good night to you, sir." He bowed, mounted his hired horse, and was gone. Marius stood with his back to the wall. His hands were shaking. Vance had said, with a courtesy that drew blood without spilling it, that he intended to win the woman if she would have him, and that he would not allow the contest to be tilted by Marius's existence. It had been the cleanest thing anyone had said to Marius in 12 months. He went back into the assembly room. Cassia was on the floor again. Vance had not returned. The Duchess of Ashbourne did not look at Marius again that evening. He went home at midnight in the gig. He sat on the edge of the bed in his clothes for a long time, and then he went to the writing desk. He did not write to Cassia. He wrote to his mother, "Madam, I am at Hollybrook for the summer. I shall not return to town. I am sorry for the disappointment this will cause you, and sorrier for the disappointments I caused you when I was younger and more obedient. I have lately come to understand that I behaved very badly in the matter of my marriage, and that my behavior was made worse by the encouragement of those who loved me. I beg you will say nothing on my behalf to any soul in town, and especially not to Lady Henrietta Marchwood, with whom you must understand, I will not now, nor ever again form any attachment whatsoever. Your son, Marius." He sealed it. He went to bed. He did not sleep, but he lay still in the dark for a long time, and at some point near dawn, he understood that he had not asked her permission for anything. He had only told her what was true. It was the first letter of its kind he had ever written to her in his life. She did not write to him. By Saturday morning he was riding north again. He passed the gates of Ashbourne Court. They were open. A barouche was being walked into the forecourt. On the box, beside the coachman, sat Lord Tobias Vance, with his coat off and a fishing rod in a leather case across his knee. Marius rode on. When he reached the village, he gave his horse to the same ostler at the Three Stags and went into the shop and bought writing wax he did not need. And across the street the Duchess of Ashbourne was coming out of the haberdasher's with a parcel under her arm, and Miss Cordelia Plummer at her side. Cordelia saw him first. She raised a hand, lowered it, and settled on a small, careful nod that she clearly hoped was elegant. Cassia followed the direction of her gaze. Their eyes met across the street. The market traffic passed between them. She did not look away. She did not nod. She held his look the way a person holds a door open who has not yet decided whether to invite you in. Then she said something to Cordelia, and Cordelia bobbed and went off down the street, and the Duchess crossed the street and stood 3 feet from him. "Mr. Crenshaw, Your Grace, walk with me a little way. Marina will follow at a proper distance. I do not wish for a private conversation, but I find I have a thing to say to you that I do not wish to put in writing. Of course, Your Grace." She turned and walked along the high street toward the church. A low stone wall ran around the churchyard. She rested one gloved hand on the stones and looked at the church as though admiring the tower. "Mr. Crenshaw," she said, "I have read your letter 4 times. Once on Friday night when it came, twice on Saturday before the assembly, once on Sunday morning. I have read it 4 times, and I have not answered it, and I shall now tell you why. Please, Your Grace, because there is no answer to it that will not give you something. If I write to you in anger, I give you the satisfaction of knowing that you are still able to provoke me. If I write to you in coldness, I give you the satisfaction of being wounded by me. If I write to you in forgiveness, I give you the satisfaction of being forgiven, which you have not earned. There is no letter I can write that does not place a coin in your hand. I have therefore written none." She turned her head and looked at him. "You imagine, I think, that you have come north on a difficult and noble errand, and that I am the figure at the end of it. The question is something else. The question is whether I am willing to spend any portion of my life attending to your conscience. I have not yet decided. I am telling you so that you do not mistake my civility for warmth or my silence for hesitation. Your Grace, I am not finished. Lord Tobias is at the court today. He is to remain a fortnight. He has come, he tells me, to fish and to read and to ask me at the end of the fortnight whether I will marry him. Another man is courting me in good faith, with my knowledge and consent, and I am giving the question my serious attention. You and Lord Tobias are not engaged in the same enterprise. He is asking me whether I will marry him. You are asking me whether I will permit you to make peace with yourself. Those are different questions, and the second is not a question I am obliged to answer. He nodded. He was not sure he could speak. She walked back along the street at the same measured pace. At the haberdasher's, she stopped. Mr. Crenshaw, do you remember the green pelisse? I do, Your Grace. I wore it the day you told me what I was. It was the only good outdoor coat I owned. The pelisse was the only thing of mine that you had ever complimented in the whole of our marriage. You said, on our wedding tour at Lyme, that the green of it suited me. I remember. I burned it 3 weeks after the divorce was decreed. I burned it in the kitchen grate of my father's parsonage at Barrowmere. My father was already dying. I did not tell him. I burned the pelisse and stood and watched it burn, because the kindest thing you had ever said about me had been said in connection with that coat. He said nothing. I tell you this so that when you next see me in a green pelisse, you will understand what it is. It is a coat I bought myself, with my own money, and have worn since because I will wear what I please, in any color I please, and I will not ever again allow the small kindness of a man to determine what hangs in my wardrobe. You are not to find it sentimental. You are to find it ordinary, Mr. Crenshaw. That is the word, I believe, that you used. She inclined her head. Good day, Mr. Crenshaw. Good day, Your Grace. She walked away. He stood on the pavement and understood that she had just said the word ordinary aloud to him for the first time in 14 months, and had used it to render a whole conversation harmless, and that this had been an act of extraordinary cruelty, performed with the perfect manners of a duchess, and that he had deserved every syllable of it. He took the longer road home. He came home at 4 and did not eat his supper. Mrs. Hatch left him alone. He sat at the writing desk. He took the punnet of strawberries which Mrs. Hatch had been quietly replacing each day, and he opened it. He ate one. He ate another. He thought of his wife in a parsonage kitchen in autumn, watching a green coat burn, and he ate a third, and at the fourth he put his head down on his arms and stayed like that until the candle burned low. He did not weep. He had been told all his life that men of his rank did not weep, and the lesson had taken so completely that the body itself had forgotten the trick of it. In the morning he wrote, with red wax this time, not green, Your Grace, I shall remain at Hollybrook. I shall not seek you out. I shall not write again unless you write first. I am attempting, with what little capacity I retain, to become a man whose presence in this country is not a burden. I make no promise that I shall succeed. I make only the promise that I shall not pretend. For see, he sent it. He did not expect an answer. He did not receive one. But 2 days later, when he rode into the village, he saw, hanging in the window of the haberdasher's shop, a length of dark green ribbon arranged across a card of buttons in such a way that it could only have been put there by a particular hand. He stood and looked at the ribbon for a long time. He did not buy it. He was not entitled to it. It was an acknowledgment, not of forgiveness, not of warmth, only of the fact that he had said a true thing, and she had received it. The fortnight of Lord Tobias Vance's visit began that evening. Marius did not see Vance for 4 days. He had set himself rules. He would not ride past the court. He would not enter the village on Wednesdays. He would attend church on Sundays. Mr. Denning, kindly and incurious, mentioned during a chance meeting in the lane that her Grace had not seemed quite herself since the assembly, but was no doubt much restored by the company of Lord Tobias. They had a fishing party Tuesday. Her Grace did not fish, but she carried out a basket and read aloud to them on the bank. They laughed a great deal. And I'm told he speaks a great deal to her in French. I'm sure it is very pretty to listen to. Mr. Denning rode on. Marius went home and thought about a French he had never bothered to learn, and about Cassia, who had read French aloud to him once on the wedding tour at Lyme, and how he had been bored by it, and had said so. He thought, she has read aloud to him on a river bank. He thought, I might endure it now. He thought, that is precisely what is meant by being late. On the 7th day of Vance's visit, an unsealed card was delivered. The Dowager Duchess of Ashbourne requests the pleasure of Mr. Crenshaw's company at dinner on Thursday next, at 7, at Ashbourne Court. He read it 3 times. He wrote on his own card, Mr. Crenshaw is honored by Her Grace's invitation and accepts with thanks. He arrived on Thursday at 5 minutes before 7. The drawing room was not full. There were 9, including himself. The Duchess of Ashbourne stood by the great window in lavender silk. Lord Tobias Vance stood at her right. Sir Augustus and Mrs. Plummer were near the fire. The vicar was there with a niece visiting from Bath. Mr. Denning was there. And one further person, sitting on a small sofa under the window, turned her head as Marius came in, and he saw, with a small, cold shock, that he knew her, Lady Henrietta Marchwood. She rose. She crossed the room with the small, purposeful elegance of a cat. Mr. Crenshaw. Lady Henrietta. What a happy surprise. My aunt has taken a house at Marlcombe for the summer, and Her Grace has very kindly invited me to dine. I had no notion you were in the country. How droll indeed. He bowed. He kept his face under such severe control that he was surprised it did not crack. Across the room, the Duchess of Ashbourne was watching him with the precise, neutral attention of a woman who had been waiting to see exactly how he managed this moment. He understood at once. She had not invited him to dinner to test his manners. She had invited him to set him in the same room as the woman his mother had pressed upon him in the winter before he ended his marriage. Dinner was announced. He was placed at the Duchess's left. This was a placing of considerable formality. As her former husband, he had no rank. She had placed him at her left hand, which was the place of a man whose conversation she meant to attend to. Lord Tobias was at her right. Lady Henrietta was 3 places down, separated from him by the vicar's niece, but well within earshot. The first remove was clear soup. The Duchess turned to Lord Tobias and asked him how the trout had been at the river that morning. He answered with charm. She laughed once. She turned to her left. Mr. Crenshaw, you have not been to the river yourself. I have not, Your Grace. I have not in some years held a rod. My late husband was a great fisherman. He left me a library on the subject. You are welcome, if it would interest you, to borrow from it. Your Grace is very kind. I am not kind. I am only tidy, and the books would otherwise sit unread. Lord Tobias smiled into his soup. Lady Henrietta, 3 places down, having now understood the lay of the land, said something in a tone clearly meant to draw Marius's ear. It is so curious how a country dinner brings together such an unlikely assembly. I had not seen Mr. Crenshaw since last autumn. I had imagined him still at Ravelstone with his mother. She wrote to my aunt only last week, and made no mention of his being north. Marius said, without turning his head, My mother does not always know my movements, Lady Henrietta. I shall write and tell her where you are. She will be delighted. She speaks so often of you. There was a small, particular pause. The Duchess of Ashbourne lifted her wine-glass. Lady Henrietta, you will of course write to whom you please. I would only observe that Mr. Crenshaw is at present a guest in my house, and I would prefer that the contents of any letters you write from this address concern matters other than his whereabouts. If you wish to write to your aunt, the desk in the small library has paper and seals and is at your disposal." She set the glass down. She turned to Lord Tobias and asked him whether he had read the new book of travels in Italy. The table, after a microscopic adjustment, talked of the new book of travels in Italy. Lady Henrietta's color rose by a precise degree. She did not speak of Marius again that evening. The Duchess of Ashbourne, at his elbow, said, "Mr. Crenshaw, you may call at the library tomorrow morning at 11, with a letter of introduction to my steward, to consult the work of Mr. Walton. I shall be out, but the library will be open to you. Your Grace is very kind. You said that already. It is not true now, and was not true the first time. I am only doing what I think I ought." The dinner went on. The dessert was strawberries. Marius took them and ate them, and they tasted of summer and of grief. When the carriages were called, the Duchess gave each guest the precise farewell their place required. To Lady Henrietta, a measured curtsy and a single line, "I do hope your aunt's headaches improve." Lady Henrietta curtsied in return and was gone. To Lord Tobias, who lingered, a smile that was warm but not private. He bowed over her hand. "I shall see you tomorrow at the river, if the weather holds. It will hold, my lord." The Duchess crossed the room. She came to where Marius stood by the door. "Mr. Crenshaw, thank you for coming. Your Grace honors me. I shall not say it has been a pleasure. It has not. But I am glad you came. I had a thing to learn, and I have learned it. May I ask what?" "You may not." Her eyes held him for a beat. There was no ice in them. There was no warmth either, only a steady looking, as though she had set down some heavy thing she had been carrying. "Good night, Mr. Crenshaw." He bowed. He went out. He rode home down the long drive in starlight, and his hands were shaking, because he had survived an evening engineered by a woman who knew him better than he had known himself, to show him what he had once chosen and what it would have made of him. At some hour past midnight, he understood that his wife had not been ordinary at 24 either, when he had married her. She had been exactly the woman he had seen at the head of the table tonight, and he had not had the eyes to see her. The next day at 11, he rode to the court. Marina led him through 2 corridors to the small library, lit by tall windows that opened onto the flagged terrace and the sunken garden beyond. The room was honey-paneled and cool. A tea tray had been set with 2 cups. "Mr. Walton is on the second shelf from the top, in the bay nearest the window, sir. Her Grace marked the volume she thought you would find most useful with a length of ribbon." "Thank you." She withdrew. He went to the bay nearest the window. The volume she had marked was not, in fact, Mr. Walton. It was Madame de Sévigné. The ribbon was dark green. He stood with his hand on the spine of the book for a long time. He took it down and carried it to a chair by the window. The flyleaf had an inscription: "To my dear Cassia, on her 17th birthday. Read and grow merry. Edward Holt, her father." The ribbon marked a letter. He read it. It was a letter from Madame de Sévigné to her daughter, in which the writer described, with the most careful tenderness and the most scathing self-irony, having survived a slight delivered by a man she had loved a long time ago, and having understood in the surviving of it that the slight had not, in the end, been about her at all. She had not been a small woman. The man had been a small man. The rest of the letter was a description of a garden in autumn. Marius read it 3 times. He closed the book. She had marked it with green ribbon and left it on a shelf in a library to which she had given a man permission to come, knowing with the exactness of an arrow that he would find it. It was not a forgiveness. It was an instruction. I am Madame de Sévigné. You are the small man. The work has been done." When he opened his eyes, she was at the door. "You found it," she said. "Yes, Your Grace. I had thought I would not be here. I changed my mind. I did not wish to lie to you about a thing as small as a morning. Your Grace. Did you read it?" "I did. 3 times." "Good." She came further into the room. She went to the window and looked out at a gardener weeding a bed. My father gave me that book on the morning of my 17th birthday, because I had, at 14, become the kind of girl who corrected his French in the margins. I read the letter you found at 16 and didn't understand it. I read it again at 24 and understood part of it. I read it again at 27 in the parsonage kitchen where I burned the green police, and I understood the rest. I left it for you because I am tired of carrying the lesson of it alone. Cassia. It came out before he could stop it. She turned her head. "Mr. Crenshaw, you will please not address me by my Christian name. I am the Duchess of Ashbourne. I am Cassia to my friends, of whom you are not one. Your Grace, I beg your pardon. Granted, on this occasion." She turned back to the window. "I shall tell you something you have not earned. Lord Tobias has asked me this morning to give him my answer earlier than the agreed fortnight. He wishes to know whether I will marry him. His heart began to do something it had not done in a year. I have told him I will give him my answer by Sunday. I tell you, because I do not wish you to learn it by post or by gossip. I am giving you a courtesy I would not have given the man I divorced. Your Grace, I am not telling you this to ask your opinion. I shall give my answer to Lord Tobias on Sunday afternoon at 4, by which point I shall not have been influenced by anything you have said or might say. Do you understand? I understand. Then you will close the book, and you will go home, and you will not write to me, and you will not call here, and you will not appear at Sunday morning service this week, because I shall be at it. Yes, Your Grace, you will give me Sunday. I will give you Sunday. Thank you." She turned to the door. She paused. "Mr. Crenshaw, I do not wish you to imagine that I have asked for Sunday, because I am afraid of what your presence would do. I have asked for Sunday because I have respect for the choice I am about to make, and I will not have it touched. I do. Good day, Mr. Crenshaw." She went out. He sat for a long time with the small old volume of letters in his lap, and he thought that on Sunday afternoon at 4, the Duchess of Ashbourne might say yes to Lord Tobias Vance, and would marry him in the autumn, and would never speak Marius's name again. He thought also that she might say no. He could not tell which possibility was the more terrible. He went home. A letter was on his desk. It was from his mother. "My dearest Marius, I have your letter. I shall reply briefly and finally. I shall not write to Lady Henrietta. You may handle that yourself if you have a man's courage. I shall, however, observe that you have been in the country less than 4 weeks and have already begun to write like a man losing his footing. I beg you, as your mother, to come home before the country undoes you altogether. Your devoted mother." He picked up his pen. He took a fresh sheet. He wrote, "Madam, the woman I discarded has not ruined me. I have ruined myself, and she has consented to assist me in observing the wreckage. I am grateful to her for it. I shall not return to Ravelstone before September. I shall under no condition visit Lady Henrietta or her family, and you shall not write to me again on the subject of either, since the next such letter I shall return unopened. Your son, Marius." He sealed it. He gave it to Mrs. Hatch to send. 3 days. He went to the desk and pulled toward him a sheet of plain paper. "Cassia," he wrote, "if you choose him on Sunday, I shall be glad of it for your sake. and shall leave this country in the morning. If you choose otherwise, I shall not presume to say what I shall do, because I no longer believe I am the man best placed to know. I write only to say that I have understood, finally, the thing you have been telling me since Hartwell House. You were never the ordinary one. I was. The whole of my life I was. And the marriage to you was the single unordinary thing I had in it, and I did not have the eyes to see it. I have those eyes now. They are no use to me, since you have gone. But I have them. You gave them to me, although you did not mean to, and I shall keep them whatever you decide. Yours, although I am not. Marius. He folded it. He did not seal it. He put it in the drawer of the desk under the paperweight that held his mother's earlier letter. He shut the drawer. He went to bed. For the first time since Hartwell House, he slept. He kept the bargain. On Friday, he did not leave the grounds of Hollybrook. On Saturday, he rode out before breakfast, west, away from Ashbourne, as far as the cairn at Stanyon. On Sunday morning, he stayed in the small parlor. The bells of Ashbourne village reached him faintly across the country at 10:30, and at 11 they fell silent, and he understood that she was now in her pew. At 1, Mrs. Hatch brought him a cold luncheon. He ate 2 bites. At 2, he went out into the garden and pulled weeds out of a bed of pinks on his knees, like a man under medical instruction. At 3, he washed and changed his shirt. At 4, he sat in the parlor with the door open to the hall. He waited. At 20 minutes before 5, hooves came up the lane. "It is one of the grooms from the court, sir," Mrs. Hatch said. "He has a note." He took the note into the parlor. He shut the door. He broke the seal. "Mr. Crenshaw, I have given Lord Tobias my answer. He has accepted it with a grace which does him very great credit, and he has left the court for Marlcombe, from where I understand he intends to depart for London in the morning. He is, by his own account and mine, a free man and a friend of mine. I have not married him. I shall not marry him. I do not write to tell you why. The why of it concerns me and not you, and I shall keep it. If you wish to call at the court tomorrow morning at 11, I shall receive you in the small library. You will not write back to this note. You will only come, or you will only not come. C. Ashbourne." He read it 3 times. The words "I have not married him" came out of his mouth in a voice he did not recognize. He went out into the hall. "Mrs. Hatch, tell the groom I send my thanks, and shall not trouble him with a reply. And, Mrs. Hatch, have my razor ready in the morning. The dark coat. Not the dove. The dark." "Yes, sir." She did not smile, but something in the set of her face shifted, and Marius understood that he had become, in the eyes of his housekeeper, a marginally more interesting employer than he had been. He did not sleep that night either. But for the first time, the not sleeping was not a punishment. He arrived at Ashbourne Court at 5 minutes before 11. Marina opened the side door and led him through the same 2 corridors as before. He went in. She was standing at the window. She wore a morning dress in pale duck-egg green, and her hair was simply dressed. She let him take 3 full breaths inside the room before she spoke. "Mr. Crenshaw, Your Grace, sit down." She turned. There was something different about her face this morning. The carefulness was gone. She had set down the public Duchess at the door, and what was left was a woman of 28 in a green morning dress who had once been his wife and had since become something larger. She sat opposite him. The tea tray had 2 cups, and this time she poured. "How do you take your tea now? Strong and without sugar, Your Grace." "Very good." She handed him the cup. "I shall begin by telling you why I refused Lord Tobias. I refused him because I did not love him, and because I wasn't prepared to enter a second marriage on any terms less than that. He is a fine man. He will marry well, and probably soon, and he will be happy. Yes, Your Grace. I tell you this because it is the only honest answer to the question you would have asked me. I did not refuse him because of you. Do you understand the difference? I do, Your Grace. Good. Now I shall tell you why I asked you here. I have been thinking, all of yesterday and most of last night, about what I want. Not about what I have lost, or what I have gained, or what is owed to me. About what I want. I have not asked myself that question since I was 19 years old. Drink your tea, Mr. Crenshaw. He drank. What I want is several things. I want to remain at Ashbourne Court. I want to manage this estate. I want to use the income my late husband left me to found 2 schools. I want to be in London for some part of the season, not for the dancing, but for the running of a small literary subscription. I want to read more French and to learn Italian. Yes, Your Grace, I want a husband eventually, not for the management of any of the above, for company, for warmth, for the human pleasure of a conversation across a table at the end of a day, for someone to sit beside me at the death of my own mother, for the things a husband is supposed to be for. Your Grace. I am not saying I want you, Mr. Crenshaw. I am telling you what I want, so that you understand the size of the question you have come into this room to be asked. His mouth was dry. She set her own cup aside. You will tell me now what you want. Without hedging. I do not need a clever answer. I shall recognize an honest one. I want you, he said. Mr. Crenshaw, forgive me. I shall be more careful. I want Your Grace to be the man at the table when you have had a long day. I want to be the person sitting with you at the death of your mother. I want to spend the rest of my life learning what you actually are, since I spent the first part of my acquaintance with you not bothering to learn it. I want you to forgive me, although I do not believe you should. I want to be useful to you. I am 30 years old, and I have until now been an ordinary man, in the precise sense that I used the word against you, and I should like, with whatever years remain to me, to become a less ordinary one. I should like to do it whether or not you allow me to do it near you. I should like to do it near you if you can bear it. He stopped. I am sorry, Your Grace. I have been more honest than I had meant to be. That is the only kind of honesty worth anything. She did not move. Mr. Crenshaw, I am going to say several things, and you will not interrupt me. No, Your Grace, I do not forgive you. I do not know whether I ever shall. The question I am most interested in is whether I trust you. The answer is, I do not yet, and I shall not for a long time. But I find that I am willing to be in the same room with you while the question of trust is decided. She paused. I shall not marry you. He nodded. I shall not marry you this year, and possibly I shall not marry you at all. What I shall do is, I shall permit you to call here. I shall permit you to ride with me. I shall permit you the use of this library. I shall permit you, in time, to dine here on evenings when I have only family or close acquaintance at table. I shall permit you, when I am next in London, to call at Ashbourne House. There will be no engagement. There will be no understanding that is not openly visible. I shall write to you on estate matters and books and the affairs of the parish. You shall write back in the same line. If, after a year of this, I find that I trust you and that I wish more, I shall tell you so. If I do not, I shall tell you that also, and you will accept it, and you will go away. Yes, Your Grace, I shall set you one further condition. You will go to Ravelstone, not to Hollybrook, to Ravelstone. You have a mother there who has been writing you letters that are evidently distressing, and you have an estate that you have not properly managed in 2 years. I shall not have a man in my life who has not done the work of being a man in his. You will go to Ravelstone for the autumn. You will speak to your mother. You will, if necessary, request that she remove to the dower house. You will see to the estate. You will write to me of these things. I shall come to you in November and inspect. Yes, Your Grace. You agree to this? I agree. Then we have the thing arranged. She lifted her cup. She drank. He did the same. You may write to me from Ravelstone when you are settled. Not before. I shall not answer at once. Do not be alarmed by silences. I am, you may have noticed, a deliberate correspondent. I have noticed. She rose. He rose. Mr. Crenshaw, you may say one further thing if you wish. After that, you will go. Your Grace, I am not going to apologize to you again. I have apologized, and you have the apology, and 1,000 more would not weigh more than the one. I am going to say only this. The morning I told you what I told you, I did not believe what I said. I said it because I was a coward, and because my mother had been telling me to say it for 6 months, and I had been too tired to fight her. I told you afterwards that I had meant it, because to tell you I had not meant it would have been to require you to forgive me, and I knew even then I did not deserve to be forgiven. I did not mean it. I have never meant it. You are not ordinary. You were never ordinary. You were the most extraordinary woman of my acquaintance from the first afternoon I met you, and I knew it then, and I forgot it, and I shall not forget it again. She stood very still. For a moment, only a moment, he thought he saw, in the corner of her mouth, the smallest movement of a thing she did not allow to come further forward. Then she said, in the level voice he had now grown used to, "Thank you, Mr. Crenshaw. Go to Ravelstone." "Yes, Your Grace." He bowed. He went. In the corridor, Marina was waiting. At the door, she said, almost too softly to be heard, "Safe journey, sir." And she closed the door behind him. He did not go back to Hollybrook by the lane. He took the longer road. He left for Ravelstone 3 mornings later. He arrived on the Saturday evening. His mother was in the small parlor with her companion, Miss Meredith Vale. His mother rose when he came in. "Marius." "Madam." "Miss Vale. I think you may take your work into the small dining room for the half-hour. Marius and I have things to say to one another." Miss Vale rose, gathered her embroidery, and left. His mother looked, he thought, smaller than he remembered. "Tell me," she said. "Madam, I have decided that I shall manage this estate myself for the autumn and the winter, and as long thereafter as is required. I shall not return to London for the autumn season. I shall not, at any time, court Lady Henrietta Marchwood, and you will not write to her or her aunt on the subject of myself again. Marius, I have not finished. You may continue to live at Ravelstone for as long as you wish, on the condition that you do not interfere again, by letter or by speech or by agency of any third party, in the conduct of my private life. If you find this condition impossible to keep, I shall have the dower house at Bramley made ready for you. I prefer the first arrangement. I shall accept the second if I must. But I shall not accept any longer the arrangement in which we have lived since my father died, in which I am the master of this house in title, and you are the master of this house in fact." She did not speak at once. He had thought she would weep. She did not. She sat very still and looked at him with the expression of a woman who has just heard, in the voice of her son, the voice of her late husband. "Where this is coming from," she said at last. "From me, madam. It is a year overdue. 2, perhaps. Do not assign it to anyone else. It is from her. It is from me. Marius, I have been your only ally in this house for 15 years. I have managed the staff. I have kept the books. I have paid the tradesmen. I have done it because you would not. I am not condemning you for it, madam. I am ending it. And the woman. There is no arrangement. There is a permission. She has permitted me to call upon her in November when she comes to inspect the estate. She has not promised to marry me. She has told me she will probably not. I have accepted this. Probably not. Yes. And you have come home to manage the estate on the strength of a probably not. I have come home because the estate is mine, and ought to have been managed by me for 10 years. I would have come home whether or not she had said what she said. Her decision will only tell me whether the life I have decided to lead will contain her or not. Either way, the life will be led. His mother was silent for a long time. Then she said, very quietly, I shall take Bramley. Madam, do not look surprised. I have lived 64 years in this country, and I know when a man is no longer to be governed. I shall remove there before the end of the month. You will visit me at Bramley on Sundays for tea. We shall in time recover something. I am too old to be told twice. Madam, do not thank me, Marius. I have only ceased to take what is yours. She rose. She came to him. She put her hand, briefly, on his cheek. It was the first time in his memory that she had touched his face. You are very like your father this evening. She left the room. He stood for some time looking at the door, and then he sat down and put his face in his hands. Not from grief, but from the simple physical exhaustion of having said the thing he had owed his own house for 10 years. He understood that he had been training for this conversation in the company of the Duchess of Ashbourne for the whole of the past month. He picked up the pen on his mother's writing table and wrote, Your Grace, I am at Ravelstone. My mother removes to Bramley before the end of the month by her own decision. I have spent the morning with my steward, who told me, with the politeness of a man who had been waiting to say it, that the South Meadow drainage has been failing for some years. I shall attend to it. I shall not write again until there is something specific to say. I tell you only that the work has begun. Yours, in obedience to the terms, Monsieur Crenshaw. He sealed it. He sent it. He went to bed. He slept. In the morning, he rose at 6. He sent for his steward. He began. The summer at Ravelstone did its work on him slowly, with no person to congratulate him on any single hour of it. He drained the South Meadow. It took 6 weeks and a fight with a neighboring farmer over the line of a ditch, which Marius won by walking the line himself with the tenant of 40 years standing and a measuring chain. He went over the books with the steward, item by item, for 9 evenings in a row. He wrote to her once a fortnight. He kept the letters short. He wrote of the meadow, of a tenant's wife brought to bed of twins, of a horse that had foundered, of a book his steward's son had lent him on Roman draining. He did not write of his feelings. She wrote back. Not at once. Not always within a fortnight. But she wrote. Her letters were slightly longer than his. She wrote of her schools, of the Italian master she had engaged, of a copyhold dispute settled in her favor, of a hawk she had seen take a partridge at the end of August. She wrote in the voice of a competent mistress of an estate to a competent master of one, and the voice of it was the most extraordinary courtesy she could be paying him. In October, Lady Henrietta Marchwood became engaged to a Mr. Carstairs of Wiltshire, 20 years her senior, well off, and a widower. Marius felt nothing in particular. His mother came to dine at Ravelstone on the 2nd Sunday of November. They did not speak of Cassia. At the end of the evening, as he handed her into the carriage, she said very briefly, She is a remarkable woman. I have, I think, owed her an apology for some time, although I shall not be making it. I shall only say to you that I see now what I didn't see before, and I am sorry for it. She closed the carriage door herself. She came on the 17th of November. The traveling carriage with the coronet on the door panel turned in at the gates of Ravelstone at 3:30. The footman handed her down. "Mr. Crenshaw, Your Grace, you have done something to the door. The hinges had dropped, Your Grace. They are properly set now. It opens straight." "It does. That is the smallest visible improvement of an estate I have ever been shown. I find I am pleased by it." She came in. She went over the house with him at her own pace. She walked the south meadow with him in the late afternoon light. She met the steward, who blushed. She read the books for a quarter of an hour. She slept that night in the principal guest room. In the morning she came downstairs. "Mr. Crenshaw, you will walk with me in the orchard before I leave." "Yes, Your Grace." The orchard was on the south side of the house. Apples were down. The grass was deep with them. The morning was cold, and the breath went white. She walked beside him for a few minutes without speaking. Then she said, "You have done the work. I have begun it. You have begun it well. You have surprised me. I had given the matter, at the start, perhaps a 1 in 3 chance. You have come up to my expectations. You have not exceeded them, but you have come up to them, which is more than most men in your position would have done. Your Grace, I am going to ask you a question. You will answer it once, and you will not embellish." "Yes, Your Grace. Do you wish to marry me?" He stopped walking. She stopped too. "Yes, Your Grace. On the terms I shall set, which will require you to accept that this estate and Ashbourne Court will both continue to exist, that I shall be away from you for portions of every year, that I shall not change my name, that the children, if there are children, will be raised in the country and not in town, and that my schools and my subscription and my Italian master and my own peculiar habits will not be reduced for the convenience of any husband. Yes, Your Grace, you accept these terms. I accept them. You do not wish to negotiate any of them." "No, Your Grace." "Why?" "Because they are reasonable, and because I should be a fool to alter what you have spent a year arranging, and because the only thing I want is to be near you on whatever terms you set, and the terms you set are gentler than the terms I deserve." She looked at him, for the first time since the Hartwell ball, since Grosvenor Square, since the strawberry stall, since the assembly, since the dinner, since the small library. She smiled. It was small. It was brief. But it was a smile, and it was for him. "Mr. Crenshaw, Your Grace, I shall marry you in the spring. Quietly. At Ashbourne, in the chapel. We shall not announce it before March. On my side, the schoolmistresses I have appointed, and the steward, and Mrs. Lydiard, and Marina. On your side, your mother, and Mr. Rye, and any tenant or servant of yours you wish to bring. Your Grace, you will not call me that after the wedding. You will call me Cassia. You will earn the right by repetition. You will stumble over it for a month, and I shall not correct you." "Yes, Cassia." "Not yet, Mr. Crenshaw. No, Your Grace." She turned. She walked on. The apples crunched under their boots. At the end of the orchard she stopped again. "One thing more. You will never use the word ordinary in my hearing again. Not of me. Not of any other woman. Not of yourself. The word is finished between us. I understand." "Good." She turned for the house. The carriage was being brought round. At the front step, before she got into the carriage, she said, "You will tell Mr. Rye that I send my regards, and that I shall expect him at the wedding, and that he is not, on any account, to be quoted in any newspaper concerning any aspect of my private life from this moment forward. I shall tell him, Your Grace." She allowed the footman to hand her in. She did not look back from the carriage window. The carriage rolled out under the hinges of the gate, which had been straightened in October, and turned for the high road, and was gone. Marius stood on the step. He was not crying. He was not laughing. He was standing. He thought, with the steady, quiet clarity that had been growing in him for months, that he had been given a thing he had not earned, and could perhaps, by working for the rest of his life, deserve a little. He went inside. He wrote 3 letters. One to Mr. Ray, one to his mother, one to his steward. He went to bed at 10. He slept. They were married in the spring, at Ashbourne, in the chapel at the end of the long corridor. It was a small wedding. The schoolmistresses came. The steward came. Mrs. Lydiard came in her best black silk, although the bride had asked her to please wear any other color, and Mrs. Lydiard had said, very politely, that she had not owned a dress that was not black for 19 years, and that she did not propose to begin at her age. Marina came. Mr. Rye came up from London with a wedding gift of a set of silver engraved with the wrong initials. The bridegroom's mother came. She wore lavender, which Cassia took, correctly, to be a small private signal across the chapel. The bride wore a pale gray silk and her late husband's pearls. She walked herself up the aisle of her own chapel, on her own feet. The vicar performed the service. The vows were the conventional ones, with one small adjustment which the bride had insisted upon. In place of the word obey, the bride had asked for the word attend. Cassia had said, I will attend. Marius had said, in a voice that did not quite shake, I will attend. The vicar had said, Amen. In the evening, when the small party had dispersed, Marius and Cassia walked out into the sunken garden. They sat on the stone bench under the apple tree. She did not speak for some time. Then she said, Marius. Yes. Do you remember the morning at Hartwell House, when the footman announced me at the bottom of the staircase? I remember, Cassia. I had been told by my late husband's nephew that I would have to be announced by my title, since the late Duke had insisted upon it in his will. I had not wished to be announced at all. I came down those stairs telling myself with every step, you are no Duchess. You are Cassia Holt, of the parsonage at Barrowmere, and you do not deserve this title. And then a footman said the words, and the room bowed to me, and I thought, I have no idea what I am, but they appear to think I am something. You found out. I found out in the long gallery, when you came in behind me, and said, tolerably, Your Grace, that I was not in fact going to be exposed, because the man whose opinion of me had been the loudest opinion of my life had become, in the course of one evening, a man I no longer required the opinion of. And I thought, walking on Lord Tobias's arm down the gallery away from you, that I had perhaps, for the first time in my life, the makings of a person of my own. He was silent. I tell you this because I want you to understand a thing, on this evening of all evenings. I did not become a duchess in order to be the woman you could not touch. I became one by accident, and by the kindness of an old man who was lonelier than he was ill. The fact that I was the duchess you could not touch was, when I came down those stairs, a coincidence. By the end of the gallery, it was a useful instrument. By the time I came north, it was a habit. By the time you came to call me Cassia again at the apple tree this morning, it had become only a story, and a small one. And the story I am living now is a better one. Cassia. Yes, I shall spend the rest of my life trying to be the man you mean to live the better story with. I know you shall. That is why I have allowed it. She put her hand on his. After a while, she said, very quietly, I have something to give you. She drew from her reticule a folded square of paper. He recognized the hand on the outside. It was his. It was the letter he had written in the small parlor at Hollybrook on the night he had been told to give her Sunday, and which he had folded and put in the drawer, and which he had meant to retrieve and burn before leaving for Ravelstone, and which, in the rush of departure, he had forgotten. "I have it," she said, "because Mrs. Hatch sent it to me. She said she had found it under the paperweight when she was closing the house. She said she had read it and had taken the liberty of forwarding it, since she had judged that you had meant to send it and had not had the courage." She apologized for the impropriety. She said she had been in service for 40 years and had never before sent a gentleman's letter without his leave, but that she had judged this one necessary. Cassia. I have not told you about it because I was waiting. I had not wished to tell you while you were doing the work. I shall give it to you. I shall only say that the line in it that begins, "You were never the ordinary one," is the line on which I made my decision in the small library at Ashbourne in November. The work was your own, but the line was the lever. I am giving you back the line. He took the folded paper. He did not unfold it. He would. Later, now he held in his hand the unsent letter that an honest housekeeper had judged him too cowardly to send, and he understood that he had been, all the months at Ravelstone, more loved than he had known. Cassia. Yes. Thank you. You're welcome, Marius. After a while, when the light had gone almost out of the wall, she said, I am cold. I shall take you in. You shall. He stood. He gave her his arm. They walked back to the house together, and in the doorway, Marina was waiting with a shawl, and the household of Ashbourne Court closed gently around them for the night. They had a long life in front of them. It would contain 3 children, of whom 2 would survive infancy. It would contain 6 schools by the time Cassia was 40. It would contain a long friendship with Lord Tobias Vance, who married an Italian widow he met in Rome. It would contain, on a morning in the spring of their 14th year of marriage, a moment in the small library when Cassia, looking up from her writing, would say, Marius, I have not in 11 years used the word ordinary, and I do not believe I shall ever use it again. And Marius would say, good, and nothing more. And so the man who had divorced his wife for being ordinary, 1 year and some months later, married her again, on her terms, in her house, in her chapel, with her vow word in place of his. He had married, in the end, the most extraordinary person of his acquaintance, and had been given, by the patience of a woman who had not been required to give him anything, a second chance to recognize her. Some marriages are saved by storms, some by silences, some by a single honest letter sent without permission by a country housekeeper of 40 years' service, who had judged her gentleman too cowardly to send it himself, and had been right. And some, the rare ones, are saved when one person finally learns to call the other by her real name. Thank you for staying with Marius and Cassia until the end of their second beginning. Their story began with a man who could not see what he had, and ended with a woman who decided, on her own terms, what was worth being seen. If you found yourself somewhere in this story, in the silence of an unsent letter, in the green of a coat once burned, in the small hard work of becoming the person you wish you had been, then this story was, in some way, also yours. If you have not yet subscribed, please do, and ring the bell, because there are more stories waiting, more ordinary people learning that the people they once dismissed were never ordinary at all. Thank you for being here. You are the reason these stories are told.